Do you have any expired cake? The woman's voice trembled as she leaned toward the bakery counter, gripping her daughter's small hand. The little girl tried to smile, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of hope, fading into disappointment. "It's my daughter's birthday," the mother added barely above a whisper. The young cashier scoffed. "Ma'am, this isn't a charity." A few customers behind them chuckled. No one said a word, except for the man standing directly behind them, a black single father, quiet with eyes that had seen too much loss. He heard everything. Before we continue, if stories like this touch your heart, consider subscribing to our channel. We share stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, stories that remind us of the goodness still left in this world. Now let's see what happens next. The man stepped forward before Natalie could pull her daughter away. His voice was calm, deep, carrying no judgment. "I'll take that strawberry cake, the big one." The cashier blinked, confused. The man pointed to the display case where a two-tier cake sat decorated with fresh strawberries and white frosting. "And add whatever she was asking for," he continued, sliding his card across the counter. Natalie turned sharply. The man stood tall, wearing a simple flannel shirt with sawdust still clinging to his sleeves. A boy around 8 years old held his hand, watching the scene with quiet curiosity. "Thank you, but we don't need," Natalie started. "I'm not giving it to you," the man said gently. "I'm buying it for the birthday girl. Different thing." His eyes moved to the little girl hiding behind her mother's leg. She couldn't have been more than 7, wearing a faded purple dress that had been washed too many times. But her shoes were clean, her hair neatly braided. Someone had tried hard to make today special. Natalie's jaw tightened. She had spent her whole life refusing handouts, working double shifts at the diner every morning, and cleaning offices every night just to keep the lights on. Pride was the only thing she had left that no one could take from her. But then she looked down at Lily. Her daughter was staring at the strawberry cake like it was something from a dream. Not with greed, but with wonder, the kind of wonder that children lose too quickly when life teaches them to stop hoping. "Mommy," Lily whispered, tugging at her sleeve. "It's so pretty." Natalie felt something crack inside her chest. The man's son tugged at his father's arm and whispered something. The man nodded, a faint smile crossing his face for just a moment. "Is it really your birthday?" the boy asked Lily directly. Lily nodded shyly, still half hidden behind her mother. "How old are you?" 7. "I'm 8, the boy said matter-of-factly. "I can teach you how to draw dinosaurs if you want. I'm really good at it." For the first time that day, Lily smiled. Not the forced smile she had been wearing to make her mother feel better, but a real one, bright and sudden, like a light switching on. Natalie watched her daughter's face transform, and the fight drained out of her. She looked back at the man, searching his expression for pity or condescension. She found neither. Only a quiet understanding, as if he knew exactly what it felt like to stand where she was standing. "There's a small park nearby," the man offered. "The kids could eat cake there, if you don't mind." Natalie hesitated. Every instinct told her to refuse to protect herself and her daughter from the inevitable disappointment that came with trusting strangers. She had learned that lesson the hard way when Lily's father walked out 5 years ago, leaving nothing behind but debt, and a note that said he wasn't coming back. But Lily was already looking up at her with those big, hopeful eyes, and the boy was showing her a small wooden dinosaur he had pulled from his pocket. "Just for the cake," Natalie said quietly. "Then we need to go." The man nodded. "Just for the cake." His name was Henry. She learned this as they walked to the park, the 2 children running ahead while the adults followed at a slower pace. He didn't offer much information about himself, and Natalie didn't ask. But she noticed things the way he watched his son with a mixture of love and sadness. The wedding ring he still wore on his left hand, the careful way he spoke as if words cost him something. The park was small, just a patch of grass with a few benches and an old oak tree. Henry stopped at a convenience store on the way and bought candles and a plastic knife. When Natalie tried to object, he simply said, "Can't have a birthday without candles." They sat on a wooden bench while Jaden and Lily settled on the grass with the cake between them. Henry lit 7 candles and placed them carefully in the frosting. "Make a wish," he told Lily. The little girl closed her eyes tight, her face scrunched with concentration. Natalie watched her daughter's lips move silently, forming words only she could hear. Then Lily opened her eyes and blew out all the candles in one breath. "What did you wish for?" Jaden asked. "Can't tell," Lily said seriously. "Or it won't come true." Jaden nodded with equal seriousness, accepting this universal truth. As the children ate their cake, laughing at the frosting on each other's faces, Natalie found herself sitting in a strange kind of peace she hadn't felt in years. The afternoon sun filtered through the oak leaves, casting dancing shadows on the grass. For a moment, she could pretend that this was normal, that she wasn't drowning in bills, that she hadn't just humiliated herself in front of strangers, that her daughter could have birthday cakes and parks and new friends whenever she wanted. Henry sat beside her, not speaking, not expecting conversation. He seemed comfortable with silence in a way that most people weren't. "You didn't have to do this," Natalie finally said. "I know." "Then why?" Henry watched his son showing Lily how to fold a napkin into a bird. The boy was patient, guiding her small fingers through each step. "My wife used to say that kindness costs nothing but can be worth everything," he said quietly. "She was better at remembering that than I am, but I try." Natalie noticed he said "used to." She noticed the past tense, the slight tightening around his eyes. She didn't ask. "Jaden hasn't talked to another kid like that in a long time," Henry continued. "Not since his mother passed. 3 years now, and he still keeps everything inside." Natalie looked at the 2 children. Jaden was laughing at something Lily said, a genuine laugh that seemed to surprise even him. "Lily's the same," she admitted. "She never asks for anything, never complains. 7 years old and already trying to take care of me instead of the other way around." Henry turned to look at her, and Natalie felt exposed under his gaze, not judged but seen. "She has a good mother," he said simply. Natalie wanted to argue, to list all the ways she had failed, all the things she couldn't provide, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she just watched her daughter play the strawberry cake, disappearing one slice at a time. When the cake was gone and the sun began to set, Natalie stood and brushed grass from her worn jeans. "We should go," she said. "Thank you for everything." "Can we see them again?" Lily asked, tugging at her mother's hand. "Jaden said he'd teach me more animals." Natalie looked at Henry, uncertain. He pulled out his phone. "Only if your mom says it's okay," he told Lily. Then to Natalie, "No pressure, but Jaden goes to Lincoln Elementary. If Lily ever wants a drawing lesson." Natalie recognized the school name. It was the same school Lily attended, just in a different grade. "We'll see." She said the same phrase she used when she meant no but couldn't bear to say it. But as they walked away, Lily clutching her hand and chattering happily about dinosaurs and napkin birds and her new friend Jaden, Natalie realized she didn't want to say no. For the first time in years, she had met someone who didn't make her feel small or pitied or broken. She had felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Behind them, Henry watched the mother and daughter disappear around the corner. Jaden tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can we see them again?" Henry looked down at his son, at the brightness in his eyes that had been missing for 3 long years. "We'll see," he said. But unlike Natalie, when Henry said it, he meant yes. A week passed before Natalie saw Henry again. She had told herself it was a one-time thing, a random act of kindness from a stranger she would never see again. She had even started taking a different route to avoid the bakery, as if the building itself might remind her of the humiliation she had felt that Saturday afternoon. But fate had other plans. The public library was free, which made it one of Lily's favorite places. Natalie took her there every Thursday evening after her morning shift at the diner before she had to leave for the office cleaning job. It was their ritual 2 hours of peace among the books, while Lily explored the children's section and Natalie rested her aching feet. That Thursday, Lily spotted Jaden before Natalie even noticed they weren't alone. "Mommy, it's Jaden." The boy looked up from his book and his face broke into a rare smile. "Hey, birthday girl." Natalie's heart sank and lifted at the same time. She scanned the room and found Henry sitting at a table nearby, a stack of woodworking magazines in front of him. He raised his hand in a small wave, looking almost as surprised as she felt. The children were already sitting together, Jaden pulling out his sketchbook to show Lily his latest drawings. Natalie had no choice but to walk over to Henry. "Small world," she said, trying to sound casual. "Small town," Henry replied. "Jaden likes coming here after school, says the books are quieter than people." Natalie almost smiled at that. She understood exactly what the boy meant. They sat across from each other, the silence between them uncomfortable at first. Natalie pretended to read a magazine while Henry pretended to study his woodworking plans. But every few minutes their eyes would drift to the children watching Lily and Jaden huddled together over the sketchbook. "She talks about him," Natalie admitted quietly. "Every day since the park. Jaden this, Jaden that. I think she's decided he's her best friend." Henry nodded slowly. "Jaden's the same. First time he's wanted to talk about anyone since." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The hour passed faster than Natalie expected. When it was time to leave, Lily begged for 5 more minutes, then 10. Natalie finally had to promise they would come back next Thursday just to get her daughter out the door. As they walked to the exit, Henry caught up with them. "Natalie." He said her name carefully like he wasn't sure he had the right to use it. "I meant what I said about the school. If Lily ever needs a ride home or anything, Jaden's there too." Natalie wanted to refuse. She wanted to keep the walls up to protect herself from whatever this was becoming. But she looked at Lily, who was waving goodbye to Jaden with both hands, and she heard herself say, "We'll see." This time, she almost meant yes. 2 weeks later, Natalie discovered what she probably should have known from the start. Lily and Jaden attended the same school. She found out when she took a rare afternoon off to pick up Lily herself instead of sending her to the after-school program. Standing outside the gates of Lincoln Elementary, she spotted Henry leaning against his truck, waiting. Their eyes met across the crowd of parents. "We have to stop meeting like this," Henry said when she walked over. "Are you following me?" "Pretty sure I was here first." Despite herself, Natalie laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but real. The school bell rang and children poured out of the building like water from a broken dam. Natalie searched the crowd for Lily's purple backpack, the same one she'd had since kindergarten because new backpacks cost money Natalie didn't have. She found Lily walking hand in hand with Jaden, the 2 children chattering away like they'd known each other their whole lives. "Mom!" Lily ran toward her, dragging Jaden along. "Jaden gave me something. Look." She held up a small wooden dinosaur carved with careful detail. Natalie recognized it. It was the same one Jaden had shown Lily at the bakery that first day. "Jaden, that's yours," Natalie said. "You should keep it." The boy shrugged, looking at his feet. "I can make more. Dad taught me. Besides, Lily said she never had a dinosaur before." Natalie looked at Henry, who seemed just as surprised as she was. "He's never given that to anyone," Henry said quietly. "His mother bought it for him. Before." The weight of the gesture settled over Natalie like a heavy blanket. She knelt down to Jaden's level. "Thank you," she said softly. "We'll take very good care of it." Jaden nodded seriously, then looked up at his father. "Dad, can Lily come see your workshop? I want to show her where we make stuff." Henry hesitated, glancing at Natalie. She could see him calculating, weighing the risks of letting someone new into their world. Maybe someday, Henry said. If her mom says it's okay. Natalie felt the familiar urge to refuse to keep things simple and safe. But Lily was looking at her with those eyes, the same eyes that had stared at the birthday cake in the bakery, full of hope and fear of disappointment. Maybe someday, Natalie echoed. And for the first time, she actually meant it. The maybe became a yes 3 weeks later. It was raining hard when Natalie arrived at the school, only to find that Lily wasn't there. The after-school program coordinator explained apologetically that Lily had been picked up an hour ago by the man with the truck, Jaden's father. He said you knew. Natalie's heart nearly stopped. She ran to her car, hands shaking as she pulled out her phone. She had never exchanged numbers with Henry. She didn't even know his last name. But she remembered him mentioning his woodworking shop was near the old mill on Cedar Street. She drove there through the rain wipers, barely keeping up with the downpour, her mind racing through every terrible scenario. When she pulled up to the small workshop, she saw Lily through the window, perfectly safe, sitting at a workbench with Jaden, while Henry showed them how to sand a piece of wood. Natalie burst through the door, soaking wet, chest heaving. "Lily!" Her daughter looked up, confused by her mother's panic. "Mommy, Mr. Henry said he told the school to call you." Henry stood up immediately, hands raised in apology. "Natalie, I'm so sorry. The school said they'd call. The rain was getting bad, and I didn't want the kids waiting outside. You should have asked me first." Natalie's voice was shaking, though she wasn't sure if it was from fear or relief or something else entirely. "You're right. I'm sorry." The fight drained out of Natalie as quickly as it had come. Lily was safe. Lily was happy. Lily was looking at her with worried eyes, afraid she had done something wrong. "It's okay, baby," Natalie said, pulling her daughter into a hug despite her wet clothes. "I was just scared. I didn't know where you were." Henry grabbed a towel from a shelf and handed it to her. "Let me make you some coffee. You're soaked." Natalie wanted to refuse, but she was cold and tired, and Lily was already asking if they could stay a little longer because Jaden was teaching her how to make a wooden box. "Just until the rain stops," Natalie said. The rain didn't stop for 2 hours. In that time, Natalie learned that Henry had built every piece of furniture in his workshop himself. She learned that his wife Amelia had been the one to encourage him to start his own business, that she had believed in him when no one else did. She learned that Henry blamed himself for her death, even though the accident wasn't his fault. A drunk driver had run a red light, and there was nothing Henry could have done. "She was in the passenger seat," Henry said, staring at his coffee cup. "The impact was on her side. If I had just taken a different route or left 5 minutes later—" "You can't think like that," Natalie said. "I know, but I do anyway." Natalie understood that kind of guilt better than she wanted to admit. She carried her own version of it, the belief that she had somehow failed Lily by choosing the wrong man to be her father, by not seeing the signs that he would leave, by not being enough to make him stay. Lily's father left when she was 2, Natalie found herself saying. She hadn't planned to share this, but something about the quiet workshop and the rain outside made it easier to speak. "He said I had nothing worth staying for. I've spent 5 years trying to prove him wrong." Henry looked at her with those steady eyes. "He was wrong." "You don't know that." "I know that your daughter is kind and brave and smart. Kids don't get that way by accident. They get that way because someone teaches them." Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them away fiercely. She hadn't cried in front of anyone since the night her husband left. "Natalie," Henry said softly, "I don't think either of us needs saving. But maybe we can remind each other that we're not as broken as we think." Before she could respond, Lily came running over with a small wooden box rough around the edges but held together with obvious care. "Mommy, look, I made this. Jaden helped, but I did most of it myself." Natalie took the box and examined it like it was made of gold. "It's beautiful, baby. The most beautiful box I've ever seen," Lily beamed. Behind her, Jaden stood watching with a quiet smile, sawdust in his hair, and contentment in his eyes. For a moment, the four of them stood there in the warm glow of the workshop, while rain drummed against the roof, two broken families finding unexpected shelter in each other. But Natalie knew better than to trust moments like these. Moments like these never lasted. She started pulling away after that. It wasn't obvious at first, a declined invitation here, a changed schedule there. She started picking Lily up early to avoid running into Henry. She stopped going to the library on Thursdays. Lily noticed. Of course she noticed. "When can we see Jaden again?" she asked every day. "Soon, baby." "You always say that." Natalie had no answer that wouldn't break her daughter's heart, so she said nothing at all. She told herself she was being smart. She told herself that getting attached would only lead to pain. She told herself that Henry was a good man who deserved someone whole, not someone held together with tape and prayers. But late at night, when Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Natalie would take out the small wooden dinosaur and turn it over in her hands. She would think about Henry's workshop, about the way he looked at her like she was worth something, about the words he had said that rainy afternoon. Maybe we can remind each other that we're not as broken as we think, but what if they were? What if she let him in, and he saw the truth that she was barely holding on, that some days the only thing keeping her going was Lily's face in the morning? What if he realized she had nothing to offer, just like her husband had? Better to end it now before it really began. Better to hurt a little now than to shatter completely later. 1 week later, Natalie went to Henry's workshop to pick up a jacket Lily had left behind. She planned to be quick, grab the jacket, say thank you, leave. No conversation, no lingering, no risk. But when she arrived, she heard Henry's voice through the open window. He was on the phone, his back to her, unaware she was there. "Yeah, she's been through a lot. The kid, too. I just want to help them get back on their feet, you know." Natalie froze. Help them get back on their feet. The words echoed in her head, twisting into something sharp and painful. All this time, she had allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was something different. That Henry saw her as an equal, not a charity case. But she was wrong. She was just another project to him. Another broken thing for the carpenter to fix. The old wound tore open, and suddenly she was back in her empty apartment 5 years ago, reading the note her husband had left on the kitchen counter. "You have nothing worth staying for." Natalie grabbed Lily's jacket from the hook by the door and turned to leave, but her foot caught on a piece of wood, sending it clattering across the floor. Henry spun around. "Natalie, I didn't hear you come in." She couldn't look at him. If she looked at him, she would cry, and she refused to give him that. "Just came for Lily's jacket," she said, her voice flat. "Thank you for everything, Henry. But we'll be fine on our own. We always have been." "Natalie, what?" "Goodbye." She walked out into the afternoon sun, and she didn't look back. Henry called. Natalie didn't answer. He came to her apartment building once. She saw his truck through the window and stayed hidden until he left. Lily stopped asking about Jaden. Instead, she grew quiet, spending hours alone with her crayons and paper. Natalie found her one night sitting on her bed staring at a drawing. It showed 4 people standing in front of a house, a woman, a man, a girl, and a boy. At the bottom, in Lily's careful handwriting, were 2 words, "My family." "Baby," Natalie whispered, sitting down beside her. "What is this? Nothing." Lily folded the paper quickly, hiding it under her pillow. "Just a picture." Natalie felt her heart crack down the middle. She wanted to explain that she was protecting them both, that loving people only led to losing them, that it was better to be alone than to be abandoned. But how could she say that to a 7-year-old who had never asked for anything except to not be lonely? That night after Lily fell asleep, Natalie sat alone in the dark living room and cried for the first time in 5 years. Across town, Jaden sat at the kitchen table, his sketchbook closed in front of him. He hadn't drawn anything in a week. The colored pencils Henry had bought him sat untouched in their case. "You should eat something," Henry said, setting a plate of food in front of his son. Jaden pushed it away. "Not hungry." "Jay, why did they stop coming, Dad?" Henry had no answer. He had replayed his last conversation with Natalie 100 times, trying to understand what had changed. One moment everything seemed fine, and the next she was looking at him like he was a stranger, worse, like he was someone who had hurt her. "I don't know, son." "Did I do something wrong?" "No." Henry knelt beside his son's chair, taking the boy's hands in his own. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults have problems that don't make sense to kids. That's not your fault." Jaden was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that broke Henry's heart. "Dad, I miss them, and I think Mom would want you to be happy." Henry felt the words hit him like a physical blow. For 3 years, he had been so focused on protecting Jaden from more loss that he hadn't realized his son was watching him drown. Amelia's voice echoed in his memory the last thing she had said to him before she closed her eyes for the final time. "Take care of Jaden." He had thought that meant keeping Jaden safe, keeping him sheltered from pain. But maybe it meant something else. Maybe it meant teaching his son that love was worth the risk, that happiness was still possible even after loss. Jaden reached into his backpack and pulled out his sketchbook. He opened it to a page Henry hadn't seen before. The drawing showed 5 figures standing together: Henry, Jaden, Natalie, Lily, and floating above them all a woman with wings and a gentle smile. "That's Mom," Jaden said, pointing to the figure in the sky. "She's watching us. She'll protect all of us." Henry stared at the drawing for a long time. His son had done what he couldn't. He had found a way to move forward without leaving Amelia behind. "I need to fix this," Henry said quietly. "How?" Henry looked at his son, at the hope still shining in those young eyes despite everything. "I'm going to tell her the truth." He grabbed his keys and walked out into the night. The knock came at 11 o'clock at night. Natalie sat frozen on the couch, her eyes still red from crying. She knew who it was before she even looked through the peephole. Only one person would show up at her door this late. "Natalie." Henry's voice was muffled through the wood. "Please, I need to talk to you." She pressed her forehead against the door, willing herself not to open it. If she opened it, she would have to face him, and if she faced him, she might break. "It's late, Henry. Lily's asleep." "Then come outside, just for a minute, please." Natalie closed her eyes. Every rational part of her brain screamed to stay inside, to keep the door between them, to protect herself the way she had learned to do. But her hand was already reaching for the lock. She stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. Henry stood under the flickering hallway light, still wearing the same flannel shirt from the workshop. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I know what you heard," he said without preamble. "I know what you think. I don't need your pity, Henry." Pity. The word seemed to catch him off guard. "Natalie, is that what you think this is? I heard you on the phone. You want to help us get back on our feet. Like we're some kind of project." Henry ran his hand over his face, frustration and exhaustion written in every line. "You didn't hear the whole conversation." "I heard enough." "No, you didn't." He took a step closer, and Natalie forced herself not to back away. "You heard me say I wanted to help you. You didn't hear what I said after." Natalie crossed her arms over her chest, a shield against whatever was coming. "Then tell me." Henry looked at her for a long moment, and when he spoke his voice was different, softer, more vulnerable than she had ever heard it. "I said I wanted to help you get back on your feet. But then I said you and Lily were helping me more. That Jaden smiles again because of your daughter. That I feel like I can breathe again when I'm around you." He swallowed hard. "I said I haven't felt that since Amelia." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. "I'm not here to save you, Natalie," Henry continued. "I never was. I'm here because you saved me first. You and Lily. You reminded me that it's okay to live again. Natalie felt the walls she had built start to crack. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. How do I know you won't leave? The question came out before she could stop it, small and broken and full of every fear she had carried for 5 years. You don't, Henry said honestly. I can't promise you forever because nobody can. But I can promise you that I'm not going anywhere by choice. I can promise that whatever happens, I'll face it with you instead of running from it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. In the dim hallway light, Natalie saw it was a photograph worn at the edges from years of handling. This is Amelia, Henry said, holding it out to her. I've kept her in my pocket every day since she died. Not because I'm stuck in the past, but because she reminds me of what matters. Natalie looked at the photo. A beautiful woman with warm eyes and a bright smile looked back at her. She could see traces of that smile in Jaden. The night she died, her last words were about Jaden. She told me to take care of him. Henry's voice wavered but didn't break. For 3 years, I thought that meant protecting him from pain, keeping him safe by keeping him closed off. But Jaden showed me something tonight. What? He showed me a drawing he made. It had all 4 of us in it, me, him, you, Lily. And above us he drew Amelia with wings watching over everyone. Henry took a shaky breath. My 8-year-old son understood something I've been too scared to see. Taking care of him doesn't mean hiding from life. It means showing him that love is worth the risk even when it's terrifying. Natalie felt tears spilling down her cheeks, and this time she didn't try to stop them. I'm scared, Henry. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not enough? Then we'll figure it out together, Henry said. That's how it works. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he took her hand in his gentle, warm, steady. You're not a burden, Natalie. You never were. You're a gift. Something inside her finally let go. The fear didn't disappear. She wasn't sure it ever would completely. But for the first time in 5 years, it wasn't the loudest voice in her head. She stepped forward and let Henry hold her while she cried, not tears of sadness, but tears of relief, of release, of something that felt dangerously close to hope. The next morning, Henry brought Jaden to see Lily. The 2 children spotted each other across the apartment parking lot and ran without hesitation. They collided in a hug so fierce that Jaden's sketchbook went flying pages scattering across the asphalt. I missed you, Lily said into his shoulder. I drew you something, Jaden replied, pulling back to gather the fallen pages. He found the one he was looking for and handed it to her with careful reverence. Lily studied the drawing, 4 figures holding hands in front of a house with a 5th figure floating above them in the clouds. Who's that? She asked, pointing to the figure in the sky. My mom, Jaden said simply. She's watching us now. She'll protect all of us. Lily looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then she looked at Jaden with complete seriousness. I'll take care of it forever, she promised. Natalie and Henry stood nearby, watching their children reconnect, as if no time had passed at all. Natalie felt Henry's hand find hers, and she didn't pull away. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure it out, Henry said. One day at a time. It wasn't a fairy tale answer. There was no promise of happily ever after, no guarantee that everything would be perfect. But it was honest, and after years of broken promises, honesty was exactly what Natalie needed. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were good. Lily started spending afternoons at Henry's workshop learning to sand wood and measure twice before cutting once. She made a 2nd wooden box, then a 3rd, each one a little better than the last. The first box, the rough one she had made that rainy day, sat on her nightstand holding the small wooden dinosaur Jaden had given her. Natalie slowly began to trust the happiness she felt. It didn't come naturally. Some nights she still lay awake waiting for everything to fall apart. But morning would come and Henry would still be there, and Jaden would still be teaching Lily to draw dinosaurs, and the world kept turning without collapsing. She started taking on small sewing projects again, alterations and repairs at first, then simple dresses and shirts. It wasn't much, but it was hers, a piece of the dream she had abandoned when Lily's father left. Henry framed one of Jaden's drawings and hung it in the workshop. It showed all four of them standing together with Amelia watching from above. Customers would sometimes ask about it, and Henry would simply say, "That's my family." 1 year later, on Lily's 8th birthday, there was no bakery and no expired cake. Instead, there was Henry's kitchen, warm and bright with afternoon sunlight. Jaden and Henry had spent all morning baking a strawberry cake from scratch. It was slightly lopsided, and the frosting was uneven, but there were fresh strawberries on top and 8 candles waiting to be lit. Lily sat at the head of the table wearing a new purple dress that Natalie had made herself. Jaden sat beside her holding a wrapped present he had been guarding all day. Henry lit the candles while Natalie watched from across the table, her heart so full it almost hurt. "Make a wish," Henry said. Lily closed her eyes, her face scrunched in concentration the same way it had been a year ago in that small park. But when she opened them, she didn't blow out the candles right away. "I don't need to wish," she said. Natalie leaned forward. "Why not baby?" Lily looked around the table at Jaden, who had become the brother she never had. At Henry, who had shown her what fathers were supposed to be like. At her mother, who was finally smiling again. "Because I have everything now." She blew out the candles in one breath and everyone cheered. Later that night, after the cake was eaten and the presents were opened, and the children had fallen asleep on the couch in a tangle of blankets and contentment, Natalie stood at the window looking out at the quiet street. Henry came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Natalie leaned back against his chest. On the wall behind them hung Jaden's drawing in its wooden frame, 4 people and 1 angel together at last. "I was thinking about that day in the bakery," she said, "when I asked for expired cake. What about it?" Natalie turned to face him, and in her eyes was something that had been missing for a very long time: peace. "I thought that was all we deserved. Something broken, something nobody else wanted. But you saw us differently." She reached up to touch his face. "You reminded me that we were worth more than our worst days." Henry pressed his forehead to hers. We reminded each other. Outside, a light rain began to fall. But inside, the house was warm and the children were safe, and 2 people who had been shattered by life had somehow found a way to put each other back together. Not perfectly, not without cracks, but together. And that was more than enough. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. If Natalie's journey touched something in your heart, maybe it's because we all carry pieces of her, the fear of not being enough, the walls we build to protect ourselves, and somewhere deep down, the hope that someone will see us for who we really are. Sometimes love doesn't arrive to rescue us. It arrives to remind us that we were never meant to walk alone. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss stories like this one. Stories about ordinary people, quiet kindness, and the small moments that change everything. Until next time, remember you are worth more than your worst days.